the distance we carve with the furrow plow. Though we till no soul, leaving love to gather moss. We don't have to live here. Love leads no fallow land. Plant that mustard seed.
Everyone, it is Thursday, May 28th, 2020. I am Swiss Guard, and this is episode number 145 of the Enough to Keep Going podcast. This week, we are doing our deep dive into the news, and I am happy to report that all four of our hosts are available and participating this week for the second week in a row, which is quite unusual. So let's say hello, shall we? Osiris Prime looking, he's in a different light today.
That's right. My light is coming from above me tonight. I have a glow about me.
Yeah, he's adjusting things in his command center. So
that's right.
DBQ, how are you doing?
I am doing okay. Thanks. It's nice to be back with everybody.
And I noticed that Agasicles is rocking the Corsair t-shirt after he sent out a picture of his new rig on Discord chat today. So how are you doing, Agasicles?
Yep, I'm doing good. The t-shirt corresponds to the new case that I'm in-ish. Let me tell you something. If you're wondering why we're late, PC power supply manufacturers, there's no reason for Molex connectors on power supplies anymore. No reason. The only thing I use Molex connectors for are to connect them to fan adapters. That is the only reason they exist in the case. You could do away with the Molex connectors and just give us a bunch of fan connectors. This is why my primary desktop was down, and this is why I had to order parts. The parts in the old PC are probably perfectly fine. This is the Molex to 3-pin fan adapter, which I discovered had this loose pin in it when I was pulling adapters to hook up the fans in the new case tonight. So there we are. That's my rant. Hopefully we'll get through the rest of the evening without me getting back on my soapbox.
The problem is this is a deep dive episode, so we're talking about industry news tonight, and we can't, like, if this was a gamer experience episode, we could go all in onto the idiosyncrasies of, you know, your own PC builds. You know, that guy behind me, my wife's rig, I had to replace the I/O panel in the front because the mic didn't work in the front, and I got sick and tired of having to pull the PC out and plug it in the back whenever she wanted to use the headset. So, yeah, that was not fun. I can rant about that, but anyway, we can't because it's not a GX show. We actually, I mean, it seems like I can give it a good rant and you know, go into explicit detail about it, but I won't. Just, it seems like every week, every fortnight when we do our deep dive, we have our slate of potential news stories that we all kind of, you know, keep track of throughout the previous 14 days. We throw it in a Google Doc, and then we all vote on which stories we want to talk about and kind of see what bubbles up. And we've been having a lot of stories to wade through lately. We had over 50, I think, this week, and we kind of pull and see what we get for the see what we can kind of bring together. This week we're going to go with some financial news, which is actually not that surprising for E2KG, and then we're going to talk a little bit about behavior of some developers, or you know, are they making good decisions? Like, what's going on there? So Eyes on Devs will be our second segment. But first, we're going to talk money and nobody took me up on the offer to do some OJ's karaoke. So we don't get the money intro. But all right, it has been a good month for the game industry. April was. This is from gamesindustry.biz, NPD. U.S. console sales in April up 163% to $420 million. In addition to that, all games, hardware, and software generated $1.5 billion last month, making it the best April on record. This is a 73% increase year over year. And the last time it was even close to that was the previous high was in April of 2008, which actually surprised me. It was that long ago when they spent when US gamers spent $1.2 billion. The hardware sales of that more than doubled year on year, 163% to 420. The previous mark was also 2008. There was $427 million in hardware sales. And I'm digging, and I forgot where in this article it shows the software, but we're going to get into some of the leading software sales for April in subsequent articles. So we'll start with DB.
Yeah, no, I think we'll keep going with the software sales, right? So you had in between April 5th and May 2nd in that same article for the Games Industry Biz article, Final Fantasy VII the remake coming in at number 1, Call of Duty Modern Warfare number 2, Animal Crossing at 3, NBA 2K, Grand Theft Auto, Resident Evil 3, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Remastered jumps up significantly from 20 to 7.
From 20 to number 7, which is...
Some of those MLB The Show drops down from 3 to 8. Madden jumps back up. Red Dead Redemption stays in there as 2K does. Prime's go-to game, Just Dance 2020, is in there as well. So not anything big or surprising in terms of some of those. The Predator Hunting Grounds game from the makers of Friday the 13th makes it up in the top 15. Mario Kart still in there as well. So I think the big news is that the Final Fantasy remake has hit some record sales as well, which is kind of not surprising given the kind of build-up, the fan nostalgia, the cultural awareness of it, and the fact that it was kind of the only big game in April. So it seems like a nice combination for Square to be able to cash in on timing after having that game delayed. When was it? It was supposed to come February and then got delayed into April.
There's another TechSpot article that we have in the slate, and it does mention that this Final Fantasy VII remake is the best-selling launch month for a Final Fantasy game ever. The previous title holder was Final Fantasy 15 back in December of 2016, which fell right in the holiday window. So, a little interesting.
I think another interesting piece of that is that at that time, Final Fantasy 15 released on both console platforms, on Xbox and PC, or on Xbox and PlayStation. Where here, this is a PlayStation exclusive, so it is selling more units, but only on one system.
Also, that as far as the hardware sales go, it's mentioned that Nintendo has been selling like hotcakes, like they have been, but I believe that both Xbox One and PlayStation 4, I'm looking for the exact quote, they're both way up as well, significantly. So I think the pandemic has probably contributed to that, because people are looking for entertainment at home. But do any of you guys see anything else in read the tea leaves or see which way the wind's blowing, and for any other reasons why we might have had such a surge this April?
So I'm going to say
Nope.
not another reason, but I've got an interesting piece here is that because of that surge, these are surges that no company planned for, right? Like people expected console sales to dwindle off, that this suddenly in their first quarter of their new fiscal year, they're seeing an unplanned increase in console spending, in game spending. The industry itself is up significantly, as you were saying. I think what this does to their balance sheets, what they look at when they start projecting about potential delays for the fall given the pandemic, that potentially this may give companies a little bit more wiggle room to decide to delay something rather than feel like they need to push it out because they've had such strong sales in this first quarter.
We'll go ahead and jump in. Oh, go ahead, Gaskles.
Yeah, so I wasn't going to wade in. I tried to stay pretty quiet during the, this is what it is kind of piece. The thing that's concerning about this is what people take from this and what the industry takes from this. It's unusual. What's weird about these numbers is 2008 was the height, arguably, of the console war of last generation. It was the year that Sony actually started to right the ship. Right? It was the 6, 7. It was the third year of that console. It was the third Christmas, and that was officially the point where things started to kind of turn around. Like stark contrast in the generation of the PlayStation 3 from 2008 forward. So it really started to actually become a two console battle at that point. What I worry about is these are anomalies. I'm hoping that statisticians and people who make data-driven decisions take these as anomalies. I'm very worried about how these feed into how everyone interprets Game of the Year, so to speak. But like, what constitutes a good game? I dare to say that there are a lot of people playing Final Fantasy VII Remake who otherwise might not have played that game. Because they wouldn't have been at home, they wouldn't have found time to fit it in the schedule, they wouldn't have been so conscious of the gaming news cycle in being aware of what that game is, had they not necessarily been on quarantine or lockdown. So, tons of people playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare because, competitive PvP gaming is on the rise right now, and again, people are at home. So I kind of worry about that a bit. I think we're going to have a very virulent argument near the end of the year as people draw on indicators that something was a great game, right? I don't, because there are a crop of people who point at sales numbers. Now that sales number data is inherently skewed.
So I think that's very much the case for Animal Crossing as well. I would say that you could make that same case in last month's NPD, and that Animal Crossing may not have seen the success that it did if the situation was not the same, of people being home and being within that kind of social media cycle.
Yeah, if you didn't have parents at home who still had to work remotely, who were now at home with kids because there's no childcare available, and suddenly were buying up Switch Lites and felt safe letting their kids play Animal Crossing, right? And not only safe because it was knowingly wholesome content, but also because it's a huge, lengthy, keep people occupied kind of game, right? In terms of its do loop and the things to do in it.
Yeah, it's not Kirby's Epic Yarn. So, it's interesting that you took that direction, because I thought you were going to be presenting like, if we're back here next spring and then numbers are down however much percent from year over year last year, and investors are skittish and scared about that or something, and it's, I kind of like the way you took that to the Game of the Year. Like, are people going to be looking at some of these games with rose-colored glasses due to look artificially inflated numbers?
Look at the sales numbers. Great Scott! Need for Speed Heat is 19th. There hasn't been a good Need for Speed game since Need for Speed Hot Pursuit in 2010, right? Like, so this is the discussion
for me, it's like Madden NFL 20. Like, this is not, to me, like Madden season. Like, that's a big jump for a game like Madden. It's just, I see a few of these games that people know, they're big names, and I think that's where, like, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 Remastered made such a big jump. So it's just if I don't want to say non-hardcore gamers, but people that aren't following the gaming cycles like religiously like we do, they're going to go to the IPs that they know.
I think the Madden one is interesting too, because it was the draft in the middle of April, right? And there wasn't really any other sports going on at that time. So suddenly, I could see, again, this is where the anomaly comes in. So
yeah, we don't have, we're not coming off of March Madness. We don't have baseball starting up, and we don't have the NBA. So you guys mentioned Animal Crossing. I'm kind of bouncing around what our agenda is, but you mentioned Animal Crossing's numbers. So it sold 3.6 million digital units in April, according to this article from GamesIndustry.biz. And another article confirms that 50% of Animal Crossing's overall sales have been digital. So I don't know if 50% were digital in April, but
so at the end of last month,
go ahead.
During Nintendo's press conference or their quarterly year-end earnings, they announced kind of game sales, and that's where New Horizon Animal Crossing had already sold 11 million. And so to see that it's still selling strong in April, it goes back to Agasicles' point of people being home and this being a convenient pick-up purchase.
So, I mean, I think who I would say that Prime is probably our resident Animal Crossing guru. Agasicles seems, I'm going to put words in his mouth, but he doesn't seem to feel that Animal Crossing perhaps is really warranted to be Game of the Year material. I know you kind of were arguing that from the Final Fantasy VII Remake as well, but Animal Crossing is another one of the big titles last month. So Prime, would you put that in that category? Would you be willing to put Animal Crossing New Horizons up for a nomination for that?
Personally, yes. I mean, I would have played this game. I mean, anyways, and it would be up there. Well, this year it's a little different because I've been buying more games than I usually would. But normally, it would be, probably one of the few games I would usually buy. But I mean, I was going to get it anyways because obviously I'm a returning player. But I mean, it's a tricky thing, the way this is all folding out or coming out, and the way Agasicles was saying, I don't think the news sites and the websites and all the well, it's not really magazines anymore, but all these sites are kind of go by like sales numbers, at least not that I've seen in the past, at least. And I don't know if that's totally what you're trying to say. Also, it's just because if that's the total, that's the only reason they say, hey, this is Game of the Year or Doom's Game of the Year, stuff like that. I think they pick it apart a little bit more than that.
It's definitely what's going to be voiced in the battles on Twitter, right? I mean, it's not. No. I mean, Jeff Keighley's not going to. I mean, so to speak, isn't going to say, well, this was the highest selling game. So I mean, Great Scott, Disco Elysium last year, right? So no, it's totally a comment about. There are people who engage in that conversation who will say, there are people who say, hey, Sony sold like this many units, Xbox sold this many units, therefore PlayStation 4 is better, right? I mean, that's the summation of the argument.
Oh, I mean, yeah. That's Twitter, and that's the internet, though. But I know what you're saying, though. I get what you're saying. But I think it's just going to be hard. And the other thing in the same article from Game Industry Biz, kind of going back to what you're saying is how the analysts and the financial people, how they're gonna take this going forward. The CEO of Nintendo was saying how we see the high percentage of these the digital sales, but they know they know this is a unique situation, and they're not going to premise their financial forecast going forward on this. But he says, on the other hand, the consumers that, the 50% of the people that bought this is, what, 7-8 million. They saw how easy this is to buy digitally. And so they're hoping in the future, they're thinking that hopefully this is going to increase their digital sales, which, I think that's kind of a duh statement. Even without, the coronavirus going on right now, I think things are probably trending that way anyways, I would think.
That was going to be actually the next direction I wanted to go with the conversation, that pulling that quote. So, Gold Star, Osiris Prime.
We think,
but I took more of a positive spin from that quote, because I feel like there's a lot of consumers that digital purchase, I think, I don't want to say wall, or the line to cross, is kind of, I think it's a thing. So there was a point where I was resisting buying digital for a long time, but once I, started it with the Switch, I kind of made a decision with the beginning of the Switch that I was going to go digital just for convenience and protecting my library's sake. But once you do it, it's not, I don't want to even consider buying physical copies of Switch games anymore. And I feel like there are a lot of parents out there, kind of circling back to the COVID thing, there are a lot of parents out there that in their mind, buying a game is going to Walmart and getting the clerk in the electronics department to get the keys and open it up and pick out the game. Going to Best Buy and going to the aisle and getting the game. And I know that we have a lot of other industries that have gone completely digital recently, like Netflix, whatever. But I think that mentality of viewing video games as for how many decades, that's how people bought games. So I think that for non-everyday gamers, it may have been a barrier for some of these parents. So I can only imagine that Nintendo folks are seeing a positive, seeing this as a net positive, because how much more revenue per game do they get digital versus physical? Like, do we have do you guys off the top of your head know the percentage?
I don't. Well, this is the thing that's unusual, right? So Nintendo has been famously staunch for being one of the ones who did not report digital sales in the past. So I find all of this very impressive. Crawling through some of the data will come from other sources, not directly from Nintendo. But then you'll get the Nintendo sales numbers at the quarterly meetings. But you don't hear a split on how much of that is digital and how much of that is physical. So,
I'm just saying, as far as if somebody buys a copy of Animal Crossing New Horizons from Walmart versus somebody buying a copy of Animal Crossing New Horizons from the Nintendo eShop, how much more do they get per unit?
No, what I was going to mention, no, I don't think there's ever been any indication of that. What we do know is Nintendo has corroborated that, much like the rest of the industry, that increasing percentages of their sales numbers are due to digital versus physical. Another thing that would help accelerate Nintendo digital sales would be putting more than 32 gigabytes of memory in their unit, by the way. Digital sales are up. All you need is a 256 gigabyte card. But, on Game Industry Biz today, we had the quote today from David Braben, who is the CEO of Frontier Games, who's the developer of Elite Dangerous, one of the more successful games over the last few years, who said, and I think this is the case, is that there's a lot of things now that are being accelerated across the entire world, across all industries. Things, movements that were already in motion are being accelerated by the current state of affairs. And one of those is his statement, quote, physical games will go away in 2 or 3 years. They were already going to go away, right? That horizon is just now shorter. There are a lot of people, as you mentioned, Swiss, who were faced with the notion now, who are buying games, who just don't have any choice but to buy digital. So it's an interesting state of affairs. Going back to what Prime was mentioning, I mean, my thing is just to not invite too many trolls who want to raise an argument. It's not necessarily to say that Final Fantasy VII isn't the best game right now, or to say that Animal Crossing isn't the best game, or that it wouldn't have led the sales. I guess I'm more concerned about the margin by which they're leading, and how that may skew things, and how it may be perceived as such an overwhelming wallop, right? So no, like the VGAs are not going to be hinged on, what game had the most sales, but whether it's subconsciously or just through awareness, just like we do, right? When we go, Destiny 2 maybe isn't, like I did a couple years ago, right? Destiny 2 may not be the best game, but somewhere I got to chew up the fact that that's where I spent most of my time, right? That kind of effect. Final Fantasy VII might not be the best game, but in the back of somebody's head, while they're making that decision, they're going to go, but great Scott, man, it like outsold every other game by like 500%, right? That's a thing, that's a data point. And so that being skewed the way that it is just further muddies the waters in a year that was already going to be hard because of the, is Final Fantasy VII the best game? That's an argument, given that, as DBQ mentioned, nothing else came out, right, for it to compete with, which was going to be the case anyway.
All right, I think we have... Go ahead.
Go ahead. Oh, I was going to say, I can go off on another tangent and say, is it even eligible for Game of the Year because it's a remaster? I mean, I know, they changed, like, it seems to be kind of a different game too, but, I mean, we got that whole argument with remasters and reboots and all that other stuff.
That's a good point. I mean, I pull, once again, right, one of the things we always do is we always go back to the data, right? We feel a certain way, we voice that a lot, and then at a certain point we go, hold on, let's true this up. We all felt strongly, many of us felt strongly about Resident Evil 2, but I went back and I looked at the data. That game was just snubbed last year, right? I mean, it won a bunch of awards for audio, but like critically, like for story, like just didn't win awards. So clearly, to me, from a data-driven perspective, that says the industry didn't regard it that highly, based on the fact largely that it's just a remake. Because technically, I would say it's a feat of engineering and even creativity, but the industry didn't seem to think that way.
That's a good point.
Yep. Man, one more comment. Swiss, just to go what you were saying about, people kind of, jumping over that hurdle, excuse me, of buying digital games. So there's a saying in one of the podcasts that I listen to for cord cutting, excuse me, that and this goes to movies and I guess music too, going back even a little bit further, about the quality. They're actually talking about quality here of like the stream or of the video or of the music. They say convenience trumps fidelity, and that's basically what happened here. I mean, to the nth degree, just because they kind of had to. You kind of had to buy digital because you couldn't go to the store. I guess you could have, still bought from Amazon physical, but I mean, it's just easier to buy from the digital store, and that's kind of happening now with games.
Yeah, and Amazon has had their shipments disrupted.
Right.
So we got one more financial article, I think, before we move on. And this one will also go to our Fortnite correspondent, Osiris Prime. I believe you're the one that probably put this in the mix.
Yes, I believe I did, if I remember correctly. So Fortnite surpasses $1 billion in lifetime spending just on app stores alone for the past, what was it? Was it just for the quarter or if it was a lifetime? I think it was lifetime, right?
This one's lifetime.
Yeah, this one's lifetime. So this, they mentioned that this is both the Google Play Store and the App Store on the iOS, but really the majority of that was from the App Store from iOS, just because the Google Play just recently got the ability to download Fortnite through actual Google Play, because you on Android before you actually had to go to Epic's site to download it directly, and obviously we report on that I think like a couple weeks ago or so, a month ago. So yeah, 1 billion sales. So Google Play was probably, they estimated about 937,000, so almost 1 million. So this is obviously, because this is a free-to-play game, it's free to play on mobile also. So this is all just like in-store, skins and emotes and stuff like that people had bought $1 billion. So I just thought that was pretty incredible that that's just on mobile alone. Now, they don't mention anything for consoles or PC, so I mean, who knows what that ungodly amount would be? But I just thought it was just kind of interesting, just on mobile alone, that they're generating this kind of cash, and obviously, once again, because of state of affairs, maybe that got inflated a little bit more than it might have been, but I still think it was a pretty big feat.
I think it's an interesting juxtaposition for the discussion we just had about consumers' willingness to buy digital, and clearly spending digitally on a mobile platform is not a hurdle that people have struggled with. It becomes that that some of that mindset between console game spending or PC spending, but even PC spending has been digital since the rise of Steam. So I think there is some dichotomy here within the industry when we look at it kind of across both mobile, console, PC platforms.
I mean, yeah, there definitely is. I mean, we have data indicating that while game industry numbers are up now for PC and console gaming, there was a brief hitch, if I remember correctly, as we immediately snapped to the transition. They went down initially. Because again, the people who were accustomed to buying physical just were out of luck, right? Couldn't do it, so sales weren't made. Mobile has not skipped a beat and has continued to rise. So as much as we talk about money is up for PC and console, it's up even more so in mobile, because as DBQ said, people don't hesitate. I think there are good technical reasons for that. I kind of laugh at it because, having just recently gotten rid of all my consoles and been through things with the Nintendo Shield and Google Stadia and yada yada yada, as I mentioned before, one of the big problems is your passwords are not on consoles, and a lot of the conveniences that we enjoy on mobile that make your passwords easily reachable on mobile don't exist on consoles. So it's incredibly a pain in the patootie to enter a 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 character password, right, manually using a controller, right, and that doofy alphanumeric keypad into consoles. It's incredibly easy on mobile. So, and oh, by the way, mobile also has mobile payments. So your credit card information is typically stored in your phone, and it is spoofed, hashed, whatever, in your phone. So it's incredibly easy, and you feel remarkably comfortable if you've made that transition to make a purchase for Fortnite now that it's on the Google Play Store, because it's right next to Google Pay, and you can use Google Pay to pay for that, whereas you might not have felt comfortable with all of the, negatively surrounding payments on the Epic Store and people claiming that the Epic stole your money or that it was insecure, yada, yada, yada. Whether that was true or not, I won't get into, but the point was people had, in larger numbers, had passed a point of comfort with things like that on the mobile store. And it's on iOS, where iOS users spend money. So there you go.
Yeah, and there's another article. I can't remember if I put it in our show notes or not, but Fortnite, well, at least for Fortnite, maybe they're not slowing down on updating it even graphically, because I forgot what the phone was called, and I can't remember. It's something I don't hear about often, but it's something ridiculous. I'm sorry.
No, I'm remembering now this article.
Yeah, there's some phone now that does super better than console graphics on these on the phone itself. So and they're definitely I don't want to say maximizing, but how would you say? I can't think of the word, but they're definitely keeping track with mobile and keeping it up to date, and even more so was some of the graphic settings and things like that.
Well, I think just clue listeners in, I think you're talking about the OnePlus article that you posted.
Okay, yeah.
But the point is, for people who don't know today, you have a whole class of phones that have grown that are specifically gaming phones that are oriented to that. Try not to get too deep before Swiss has to pull me out and move on. Your GPU might be powerful, but lots of gamers hook those up to 60 hertz monitors, so no matter how many frames your GPU can push, you're still capped at 60 frames per second. That class of mobile gaming phones is up at 90, 120, I don't know of any 144, but my Razer Phone 2 has a 120 hertz display. My Samsung Note 9 has a 120 hertz display. The Nubia, the Red Dragon, all these super phones, the Asus ROG. All of those phones are doing 90 hertz or higher, and so inherently they are probably playing better than your console, which is probably connected to a 60 hertz monitor. Again, TVs went higher frequencies sooner, so lots of people have 120 hertz TVs, even 144 or 240 hertz TVs. But there was a lot of mystification around that and whether or not it was really worth your money and blah, blah, blah. So I think it was a little slow on the uptake. But if you're a gamer and you like gaming on mobile, take a look at gaming mobile phones because it's not a bad deal.
All right. Have any more, any last comments on financials? Okay, so we are going to take a look at a few different development studios and what's going on with them. We don't really report too much on like such and such game just released unless there's a news hook involved. Kind of end up saying, oh, this is a new game, and we played it on the GX show. But I am going to report on the release of Minecraft Dungeons. So this was announced, I believe, at last year's E3, and it's the kid-friendly Diablo-like Minecraft skinned, action RPG with procedurally generated levels. So it did not come out of the gate strongly. A lot of people, when they first launched the game, a thing pops up, game ownership, and it's a message that says, game ownership not established. Sorry, you don't appear to own Minecraft Dungeons on this account. Make sure that you are signed into the correct Xbox Live account and restart the game. So needless to say, this kind of upset some people because, newsflash, Minecraft is kind of a large intellectual property, so people are looking forward to this. I know that my kids have been waiting for this game for months now, so I bought it on launch day, and we have not played it because of this error message.
PC?
On PC, correct. I think things went okay on the PS4 and the Switch, and I think even on the Xbox. I think most of these problems have been PC centric problems. But the nice. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, we played it last night on Xbox, and none of the account issues that you encountered on the PC.
One of the nice things about buying it on PC is I can buy one copy through the Microsoft Store. It's attached to my Microsoft/Xbox account, right? Everything's connected in the background. If you have a Microsoft family group or whatever they call it, some of my children have Microsoft accounts, like Xbox Live accounts, that are in my family group. I purchased the game. Anyone can play the game that I purchased with under their Xbox account. So, for example, for Minecraft, I purchased it. All my kids with Xbox accounts can play Minecraft as, themselves. They're not logging in as me to play it. In addition, I can do it on all my PCs simultaneously. So I buy one license of Minecraft, and everybody can play it all across all the PCs at once, logged in together, networked, and play with their cousin the next state over, right? Minecraft Dungeons, they said that they fixed the problem. And there's two issues with that. First issue, it hasn't fixed it for the family group. So people like me, I saw some other people tweeting, it's still being blocked for them. And for a game like Minecraft that's targeted towards children, the idea that you're going to have to purchase multiple licenses is not good for parents. They haven't come out and said that's what's happening. I've seen some articles that make it seem like they don't intend for this to happen and they're just working on it. But the next thing is, so in the initial fix, I guess they pushed out a new version of the game, and it wiped people's saves out. So some people had already leveled up considerably in the one day that it was out, and then they're like, "Hey, thanks for fixing it. My character's gone and deleted." So rolling out of the gate, it's not a good look for Mojang, and yeah, I kind of hope Agaskis is able to get back soon, because this is kind of the second launch in a couple of weeks that we've seen, and they're not coming from a 5-person part-time indie dev studio with these issues. So we saw this with Minecraft Dungeons, the biggest intellectual property on the planet, and a week or two ago we saw the same thing with Amazon's Crucible, because the first night it came out on Steam, they have a banner on the menu saying, "Hey, if you've completed the tutorial and you try to get in the game and it makes you go in the tutorial again, just do it one more time. It'll be okay after that." So that's kind of a pretty question. Makes you raise your eyebrows. But DB,
And you've run into both of these bugs. Where,
yes,
it doesn't always happen that the co-hosts here have experienced some of the problems that kind of bubble up throughout game launches. But last week, between the Crucible tutorial bug and now your Minecraft Dungeons issue, you've been a good guinea pig for us, Swiss. So thank you.
I guess I have to. Somebody's got to do it, right? But these seem like, what bothers me most about both of these stories is it seems like such fundamental pieces of the game are broken. There's no reason why this should not have been completely vetted, tested from early in the development side. Like, why is the licensing broken this late in the cycle? So I imagine it could be a server issue, but it doesn't strike me that if it's pinging back the Xbox Live servers that Minecraft Dungeons is the only one that's experiencing the problem. It just, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss. It feels, laziness is probably not the right word, but I feel like these companies are being forced to put their stuff out before they're ready for prime time, and it's kind of sad that the industry's. I mean, it is what it is, I guess.
Well, it's a good case study. I'll try not to get too deep into academia in software engineering, right? Because this goes to conversations I was having earlier today. These are infrastructure bugs, right? These are not functional bugs. Gamers, amazingly, it's a conversation we should probably have, will put up with a functional bug, right? They'll put up with, like, a feature not working, right? But this goes to show that, while we're infrastructure and the rage these days as infrastructure as code is not sexy, it doesn't get a lot of highlights. I relate it back to jobs I had earlier. I call them thankless jobs, right? When they work, nobody says anything. Nobody gives you credit for them. Nobody sings your praises. But when they are broken, you will hear about it until the cows come home. And these are the types of things that tend to not get attention. These are the type of developers that aren't necessarily the highest paid. These are the types of things that managers and leads tend to not focus on. And when was the last time that you saw an infrastructure guy promoted to management or lead? It's typically guys who are deep in the functional end of the code. So there's a wellspring of companies that are sprouting up around infrastructure these days and automation, and that's great. But yeah, I mean, these are the type of things that, like, when you don't pay attention to them and you let them get by and you don't have robust testing around them, they really cut you off at the knees, right? But, like, again, much more so, like, people would have put up with, like, a weapon not appearing in your first-person view hand, right, when you were running along and you go, oh, well, it looks like I'm not armed. Oh, but I'm firing. Okay, I'll deal with that, right? I'll talk about it. But things breaking that just prevent people from playing the game or owning the game are problematic.
Yeah. I will say, on I will say that the whole testing the infrastructure as code is not as simple as testing just a software executable.
No, you're absolutely right, and it's part of my argument. It's why it doesn't happen.
Yeah, it gets ignored.
Right.
But it still feels like you can have a test run where the game's not available to people, and know that these things, your ducks could be in a row still. It doesn't mean it's impossible, and it's hard. And yes, as Gascally said, thankless, but it's not impossible.
I'm with you. Anyway, the last thing I'll mention, the thing that confuses me, like you said, Swiss, is in PC gaming, especially what we talk about is the reason why testing is hard and the reason why the unexpected happens is because of the myriad of hardware that you have to test against and the number of surprises that can hit you when something gets out in the field. These are not bugs associated with people being on different hardware, right? This is a thing that should have worked whether a person had an SSD or an HDD. It shouldn't have mattered, and the testing shouldn't have mattered.
All right. Oh, okay. Sorry, I skipped an article. We'll go from a guy stumbling out of the gate to a team that face planted out of the gate and is trying to recover. I think I will. I'm not sure who. I think Gascles voted for this article, but I know DB is probably our most our greatest Anthem sage. So I'm going to throw him this news article to launch our discussion.
Sure. So I think the stumbling out of it's saying that a team stumbling out of the gate is a wonderful understatement of a transition when we talk about Anthem, right? But this is the Anthem 2.0 announcement that so this was, they had said that they were working on Anthem 2.0 last year, that this was going to be kind of part of its reworking of systems, and the current development team for it. So the current development team is no longer the main BioWare team that was working on it. It has been kind of handed over to what the live team was, which is at BioWare Austin, which also did a lot with the live team support and continual support and development for the Old Republic, the MMO, the Star Wars MMO. And so, but this is kind of them saying we are in an incubation period, that, we are going to be testing a lot of things. You're going to see things that may not make it into the game, but we want your feedback along the way. And we're doing this with a 30-person team. So, right? I mean, I think the communication piece of this, like, hey, come along with us for the ride, has been similar to what Anthem has tried to communicate from the beginning, in terms of, we know we need to work on this. Thank you for sticking with us. But now they're saying it in such a way like, we're not quite sure what we're going to do, so we're going to try a whole lot and see what sticks. But we also are going to acknowledge that there's only 30 of us. So the capacity for that team to do that quickly or to push those things out on a large scale, I would say, I'm not a developer, but 30 is a relatively small team to be tackling an engine as large and as buggy as Anthem's Frostbite 2 engine or Frostbite engine was.
I don't understand the thinking.
The thinking that Anthem is worth saving, or the thinking that this is enough people to fix it?
Probably leaning towards the latter. It's just, what's the end goal? Like, I mean, if they legitimately think Anthem can be saved, right? And it's worth saving, and two, it can be saved. Why does it feel like they're kind of throwing some extra developers at it and just seeing what sticks? If they don't believe it can be saved, like, why are they wasting those devs' time? Are they just trying? Is it just busy work because they don't actually have a big job for that team yet? And in a year, perhaps, we're not going to hear any more about Anthem next, and those guys are going to actually be put on something else. and it's something for them to be kind of working and just playing on as a sandbox, and they don't really actually think Anthem's going to become of anything. Like, why do they want to even try to save Anthem at this point? Like, what do they think that they can crack into the market, after all this time and after all this bad publicity? Maybe they're looking for a Hello Games type rebound where people are like, oh wow, look what they did, look at it now, and they get some positive buzz. But it just seems off to me.
I think I get it. We give a lot of praise to Hello Games in the turnaround. We also give a lot of praise to Ubisoft for turning around Rainbow Six Siege, right? And EA is a company that has done this before. You look at Battlefront 2, right? I mean, just a complete harry-carry right out of the gate with the way that thing was developed and sold and packaged and talked about. Was the biggest problem was how they talked about it. But it was given over to the developers to set it right, and some very passionate people came along and turned that game around. I don't know that was necessarily reflected in sales numbers, but the people who were staunchly loyal to the Battlefront franchise were eventually rewarded for sticking with that game, through all the trials and travails. What I will say about Electronic Arts, now I get it, because DBQ included a critical piece that I was not aware of, is they have given this to the Austin team. This is the team that everybody doubted when Old Republic was coming out, and that thing is one of the biggest success stories in massive multiplayer online games. It has a staunch religious online following. It is, dare I say, unbreakable. I mean, like, it's a force. Every time I see people playing it, I'm like, what? Why are you? And then I scratch the surface of it. I'm like, what that team has done is amazing. I think, and it's a little bit of speculation, but I think what's going on is that, what I'll say about this team is that team in Austin has created an excellent discipline of maintaining a game as a live service. And so it is an excellence in art in doing maintenance and upgrades on a game while it is a living game and people are using it, while it's out in the wild and it's in people's hands. Probably one of the best teams in the industry. I think what they have done is they have, number one, why do it? Because of the money invested, which includes the money in the what is the thing in the Frostbite engine, right? It's the money in the engine, the capital investment, and the money invested in Anthem itself. And to a certain extent, I think it's a little bit of a spiritual pursuit and pride, right? It's like, if we let this fail, then that's a thing. But I think what they've done is, I think they've taken it and they've given it unto the team that has the absolute best chance in turning it into a success. And I think what we're hearing is that team saying, first of all, we've given this to the A team, right? We've given it, yes, we've only given it to 30 people, but we've given it to the 30 people that we actually think can figure this thing out and turn it around. Why does it take so long? Because we need transition time in figuring out the code that we didn't write and taking it over. We can do it, but it's going to take us some time. And I think they've given it to the team that has the biggest success in actually turning it around. And what they don't want to do is they don't want to take it offline and tell people to stop playing it and it's going to come back, which was the rumblings we were hearing about the original plan. The original plan was to basically retire the thing that was live and then light it back up and bring it back, but they're going to keep it up. And so they're giving it to the team who has, like I said, the best chance of doing that. I sort of get it, and I'm a little behind them and kind of seeing what they can do. But yeah, I think that's just kind of where they are right now.
It's a very optimistic take.
So I'm going to
makes sense.
piggyback on Agasicles and say I'm behind them as well, right? I mean, I was a little snarky about why they should, questioning whether or not they should even do this. But you're completely right about the Austin team. And one, the live support of the Austin team, the storytelling that they've done within the Old Republic with, the above 60 level stories that they've done, little self-contained year-long stories have been a new way that they've continued to engage that audience. I think one of the other things that, as you were talking about this, one of the things I was remembering is that thinking back to Jason Schreier's article about the troubled development of Anthem is that the Austin team was seen by the main BioWare team as kind of the B team, as kind of the also rans, and not given when they provided feedback. That feedback was not acted upon, or kind of it was not incorporated, and so to potentially give it to a team that has a better track record with this, whatever comes of this, I agree with you guys, is that they do probably have their most competent team to try to salvage something.
Prime, do you have any thoughts on Anthem? Did you play it on Xbox?
I did actually. I played. What was it? The beta DB. We
played the beta together, and a couple people from
the CAG forums. Yeah, I mean, I liked the game. It played well. I didn't have any problems with like mechanically. And there was a beta at the time, so I mean, I didn't have anything with the story. But I guess that's my question: is it the story? Is it the mechanics? I mean, what was the really big deal that people didn't really like Anthem as it was when it came out and as it's been out?
I think, the parts that they didn't like was once you got past kind of the long load times, the kind of everything kind of separated out, the awkward storytelling versus the fluid gameplay. And then the fact that the kind of the chase for a looter shooter and a loot based grind was very shallow for those that made it through, and then for those that were trying to make it through, there was a lot of padding that occurred kind of mid game to kind of to gate some progress. So there were a number of issues that pick your gaming preference, and somebody found, the story people were not happy with it, the looter shooter people were not happy with it, and it kind of fizzled on both ends.
Okay, so just like a little bit of everything then. Sorry, go ahead.
I played the demo on PC, and I was actually disappointed with the mechanics. I found, which is why maybe looking at the article, I have more of a negative view about it, because my immediate reaction was we have to fix the structure of the game, like mechanically. And to me, that's not something that you can just say is going to happen. I found I remember not being able to control it very well. I found the maps kind of designed in a way that was like artificially constraining for a game where you're supposed to be like in a flying mech, like Iron Man mech suit. I don't know if some of the later levels help that, but just I didn't enjoy playing it, much less the story. I think if they feel like the mechanics are there and are strong, then yeah, you can add more story content, and progression content, and I think you could. I do think that's an attainable goal. But if that were if that were their only concern, why was there rumblings that they were going to like take it offline? Like if it's just a lack of quality story content or quality progression content, I don't think there's any reason for them to take it off. But I mean, there's some PvE and PvP stuff in it, right? Or like competition type modes, or is it all just?
I don't know if there was any PvP. Was there TB? I don't think so, right?
No,
yeah,
there's not yet. Okay,
it was just all PvE.
So I can see how they might feel that it would. Obviously, people would get bored with it. But like when I hear, they're planning on taking it offline, I just think that means they think it's fundamentally broken under the hood. But
well, that might have been with like the old dev team, right? Or was that going to be with the new team or it was that just kind of a rumor kind of a thing, right?
It was just part of a very notional soundtrack. I mean, what it sounded like was that there was an intent there, as DBQ mentioned, there was this talk of like more of like an Anthem 2.0 / reboot, right? It was and so maybe taking it offline was too strong a language. What I felt like was that whatever they were going to do with Anthem was going to be behind the curtain, and that whatever was out, if it remained online, that was going to just continue as it was, and then eventually it would be relaunched as a new thing. What we're talking about now, as far as I understand, is different in that it's going to happen on the game that is live.
Fix it.
Yeah,
supposedly.
I mean, the hope here is that, I think, and it's just a guess, I think that the Austin team has enough cachet to have taken that assignment or chosen to not take it. I'm hoping that they were given some opportunity to make an assessment, and where we're going is based on them voicing that they felt like the game was salvageable, and that it wasn't just something. I don't know that team is somebody who, again, given the success of Star Wars, The Old Republic, Star Wars, right? This is the thing that you go, when Disney calls your CEO and says your Battlefront 2 plan is all dorked up, right? This is the team that you point to and says, yeah, but we're knocking it out of the park, right? Don't take the license from us. We're knocking it out of the park with The Old Republic, right? We know how to do something right. I feel like that team had the right to take this on or not take it on. I'm hoping that they had some time to assess it beforehand, and where we're heading is based on that feedback.
I know I was talking to DB before the show a little bit about Crucible, and I don't like seeing teams, I know how hard it is to develop software, and I don't like seeing teams put something out there and then have like immediate negative reaction. I know it's got to hurt. So, like, I'm not rooting for them to fail. I'm hoping that they can turn it around and make something that they can, that people enjoy. A majority of people enjoy playing. Let's put it that way. So,
gentlemen, congratulations. We have just talked about Anthem more than any other podcast in the last year.
We're gonna go
15 minutes, 20 minutes.
We're gonna go from one looter shooter to another. I'm gonna throw this one over to Agascles, because I think you voted for these stories in the slate. Destiny 2 gear will soon become less competitive over time. This is from Electronic Gaming Monthly, although there are some other articles, some other places also reporting it. Basically, starting in Season 11, weapons, non-exotic weapons, so the exotics are like the top tier weapons, will have a cap on their effectiveness. So as you move from Season 11 to Season 12, you may not be able to upgrade your regular whatever auto rifle that you like using to the max level for other Season 12 weapons. It will be locked at whatever the cap was in Season 11. And then as they move on to Season 13, additional stuff will hit the roof, so to speak. Again, that's not for exotic gear, but most regular gear will hit these limits, and so over time become less and less effective. And the thinking is then players will have to transition to some of the newer weapons that they're introducing each season. The community isn't happy about it, and basically this article from DestinyTracker.com kind of pulls some quotes from the Bungie forums, and a lot of the players they basically don't trust Bungie to be able to keep up with the sunsetting. In other words, are they going to actually be able to provide a variety of new weapons that people will want to use and be able to access? Destiny's become a pretty severe grind lately. So I imagine, Agascles, you chose this story, one, because you're a Destiny fan, but two, because you wanted to chat a little bit about the concept of these service-oriented games and sunsetting equipment in them. Is that something that tickles your talk show fancy?
Probably, yeah. Don't take me voting for articles as an indication of my competence. It's not necessarily the case. You certainly play Destiny 2 way more than I do, and summarize the article better than I could. DBQ as well. I thought as I read this article last week or a couple weeks ago, what I thought was very interesting as I've become more interested in persistent progress games is just the conceptual notion of this becoming a thing within the business model and the gameplay model of persistent progression games, right? Overall, I'm fine with it because I do this to myself about things periodically, right? Like I max out my storage on a console. I am just as likely to just scorched earth wipe the console and all of its memory and start over, and it doesn't bother me if I have a cloud save on a game or I have a local save on a game and I lose the local copy, right? It doesn't bother me. The things are the most fun at the beginning. They become less fun as time goes on. So hitting the big reset button really doesn't bother me. I think it's interesting how the community takes this on. I constantly say for persistent progression games, and I think this is an interesting thing to think about and explore also. In a lot of other businesses, in most other businesses, you are most concerned about your customers that are your long-term customers and your customers who you're relatively guaranteed to make the next resale to, right? You're not as concerned with your new customers. They're second, right? Keep the customers you have first, get new customers second. But when you look at certain other industries, who does Verizon give the biggest discounts to? People who are new customers. I constantly have to call Verizon, right, and my ISP and whatever about, hey, you're giving all these new customers a bigger discount than you're giving me. How about I just cut my service and go somewhere else, right? And for a while when I was reviewing mobile devices, I periodically shifted mobile services, one, to test them, but also because I got a big discount in moving. So I look at games, and what seems to be true mostly is that long-term persistent progression games as a service, are less concerned with their veteran players than they are about bringing on board new players. People constantly gripe about changes in Fortnite. I'm like, guess what, guys? Those changes get the mid-grade players encouraged to spend more money, right, and bring new players on, right? Like that's who they're concerned about. So you look at Destiny 2, and a lot of the outcry is from veteran players who have amassed all this gear and are like, well, but blah, blah, blah. I'm like, I don't know that's Bungie's primary concern, right? Bungie also has to contend with this from a design perspective, in that just the game has gone on so long where there's too much stuff, right? I go through this with Star Citizen, right? They're like, oh, we're going to release a new ship. I'm like, well, how many ships are there supposed to be in the universe, right? How many ship manufacturers is realistic? Like, at a certain point, you get too many ships, and they're not differentiated enough, so they don't matter. I like the cosmetic, the skin application, because you don't have to vary the game design mechanics under the covers so much, as far as just changing the artistic value of them, and that's easier to do, and it's more okay. Then I feel like my gun, right, the characteristics of my gun make a difference. Less so when there's like 50 bajillion of them and they're not differentiating. You can't tell what the difference is between them. So I mean, Destiny's at some point is heading for a big reset button. For the people griping, I would maybe walk that back a little bit and say, well, this is better than them just resetting all the servers and making everybody start their progression over, right? Which is another possibility, right? Or releasing Destiny 3, which is another possibility. So it'll be interesting to kind of see how this comes out.
Your thoughts? You probably have the most hours logged into Destiny, I think, in E2KG.
I think that the challenge here is somewhat of what I guess Eccles was talking about keeping newer players engaged and satisfying legacy players is always going to be a difficult balance, if not an impossible balance. I think the game design piece is that over time, some of the guns and perks that they've released within Destiny 2 haven't been outclassed by newer seasons, right? So there are certain perks from previous seasons that combo together in such a way that require it would require nerfing, which is what they're working on and what they've talked about in the the last two this week on Bungie's, is that there are not only guns that will be, leaving, but also perks that will be being nerfed because of kind of the overpowering aspect that it provided. It created a situation where their current season guns, as we were talking about Swiss, right? The current season is a lot of grinding, and that if the rewards are not worth it because you have something previously that still outclasses the new things, then you, even for the legacy players, there's not a reason to stay and remain engaged. And so I think that this, from a long term game plan design piece, it makes a lot of sense. From an individual player collection mentality is where people kind of have a concern with.
Yeah, I think I agree with you guys. I don't have enough time in the game, or I don't have enough time to devote into the game to really worry that much about specific items of gear that I have. So I'm not sentimental about whatever helmet or shotgun I particularly have. About the only item I can tell you that I have right now, like by name, would be the Hammerhead machine gun that I got, because it's my only machine gun. And, they're hard to get in the game. There are probably plenty of others that are much more powerful, because I think this was kind of like a relatively low-hanging fruit quest for me to get one. If I got it, it means it was low-hanging fruit. So, I don't have that attachment to these digital items, and I kind of also work very hard as a gamer not to get attached to digital things that can just go poof if the developer so chooses. I can see why, if you've been grinding away at something and making it better and better over time, you'd get upset. But I think I understand Bungie's mentality on forcing people forward into new content and new gear. To me it makes sense. And the big thing though is they aren't doing it for exotics. So the most premier gear in the game, and I think some other gear that you get in a couple of the raids, the most premier gear in the game, they're not putting this limitation on. So
I think the hardcore Destiny players would tell you that some of the within the meta, that some of the most premier guns are or legendary guns, purple guns, because of series of perks, right?
Gotcha.
I think that is where the hardcore meta players are probably taking issue with some of this, or at least not seeing it in the way that we're discussing it in terms of long play game design and engagement versus kind of current achievement.
I know you're not a big Destiny player, but do you have any thoughts on sunsetting equipment?
Nothing. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually, I was gonna what Gascles had mentioned. I was just gonna compare it to Fortnite and how they take out weapons and vehicles all the time. So I mean, for me, it's not a huge deal if I was to jump back in there. And I played it a little bit. I played the first Destiny. I played it quite a lot, and the second one, it's kind of been on and off. But I mean, like you said, it's not like they're doing it for every weapon, and even the higher up weapons, mythic. I'm sorry, I forgot what was it called.
Exotic. So
I mean, I don't know. I guess people are just gonna complain, I suppose. But yeah. I mean, I'm just used to it. I mean, there's been times, and even in Fortnite, where they've taken out weapons that and they take out weapons and this is for everybody. It's not just for certain people, or people who've only been playing the first 3 years or something. They just take it out of the game. So I mean, they just rip it out of there. So it's just something you get used to, I suppose. You're gonna have to, but it's not a big deal.
I don't ever see us get like really torches and pitchforks about things like this. But I think
I've had my problems with Destiny in the past, but I think I've gone past it a little bit. So
yeah, but like I don't know. I feel like these stories, they always kind of tickle my funny bone when when an internet community gets really hot under the collar about something like this. Like I can understand being upset at EA, like the way they came out of the gate with the Battlefront 2 microtransaction model that they had. But something like this, like, I don't know. And you know, it's it may just be like the hardcore vocal minority, you know, they have the game the way they expect it to be, and change is hard sometimes. But
well, be wary, because before it's all said and done, if we're lucky, if we're fortunate, we will probably end our gaming careers in a state where we are just playing one game. Right, that's the hypothesis I'm chewing on now, right? Because as we talk about Gray, who's no longer on this show, and kind of how he approaches things, right? I would contend his width of what he's playing, right, has narrowed, and I feel like I've been crossing a terminus to where I'm kind of going through a little bit of the same, right? It's hard for your field of view to cover 50-something different games, right? And so there's a desire to decrease the amount of hassle and jumping around and inefficiency, right, to reduce that aperture. So I'm sort of kind of starting to feel like I spend a lot of time playing World of Warships now, right? I may be entering the zone where if they change something in World of Warships, it might really bug me, right? As time goes on and I get older and my time changes, my interest level in that type of stuff hasn't crossed the threshold yet. I still look at the people who are complaining about Destiny 2, and I'm like, the game's been out for 3 years, guys. What are you doing? Like, just move on to the next thing, right? Or mix it up. I mean, so I'm still there, but I've seen enough of the glimmer of maybe the scope that they're looking through that now I sort of kind of get it and understand. Now, again, these are people who are 20 years younger than I am, so I really don't get it, right? But from a gameplay perspective, I think I see and understand a little bit more now.
Okay. Well, anybody have any? I think that's the last story we had on our agenda, and I'm pretty sure we've gone past the hour goal by a significant amount. So, anybody have any final thoughts before we wrap it up this week? Nope. All right. So next week, June something or other, probably the 4th, I think. We will be back with the GX show where we talk about what we've been playing. I think I'm on it. I don't know who else is on it with me, and I hope I will get to all 4 of us again. Okay, cool. I hope I'll get to report on Minecraft Dungeons and that bug will be fixed, but we shall see. So until then, I suppose keep going, keep playing, have fun, enjoy the hobby. Please don't get too wrapped around the axle about minutia of meta game designs. And until then, till next week, have a good night. Bye.
Okay, we're on the outro. Audio is muted, so you guys are free to talk. I'll probably let it run for about 30 more seconds.
When I've had enough of everything, follow those lines. Do what's for me, I get inside. Now it's dark.